Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. In fact, today is going to be a quick tip Tactica, and I hope you guys are super excited because we are going to be talking about super heavies. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about the best super heavy that you have never heard of. But as of right now, from the latest balanced data slate, this is the best super heavy that you can take in your Imperial Guard. It is as simple as that. No, it's not the Baneblade, although I will definitely accidentally refer to it as the Baneblade throughout the whole time because I just have this thing in my brain where I refer to all Guard super heavies as Baneblades. That's not true. It'd be like referring to Hellhounds and Basilisks as Chimeras. They're not. They may be on the Chimera chassis, but they're not. And this may be on the Baneblade chassis, but it is not a Baneblade. It is, in fact, a Arcturian pattern Stormblade, which you can buy from Forge World. So it is a Forge World unit, and it is a very interesting one. You see, it has a lot of firepower in a rather, for a super heavy, affordable package. So let's take a look at this unit. What does it have? Well, like any good Guard super heavy, it has access to a pretty durable stat line. It has movement 10, only weapon skill 6+, but that's not going to matter as you're going to find out later. It's got ballistic skill of 4+, its strength 7, its toughness 8, it's got 26 wounds, 6 attacks in combat, leadership 8, not that really ever really matters, and it has a 2+ save. Why does it have a 2+ save? You go and check its data slate, it's got a 3+ save. No, not anymore. Thanks to the latest balanced data slate, this unit is a Titanic unit and it has a 2+ save. And it has access to Armour of Contempt because all Imperial Guard vehicles got access to Armour of Contempt, which solves one of the biggest problems with Imperial Guard super heavies. They do not have an invulnerable save. Now, whilst Armour of Contempt does not give you an invulnerable save per se, it certainly lets you pretend that you've got one. Because if you hit this tank with a melter gun, it's still going to have a 5+, which is like basically what we've been asking for with the Baneblade. It needs some kind of protection against melter guns. You can't have people swanning in there with a melter gun and the Baneblade not getting a save. Now it has saved. Not only does it have a 2+ save, but Armour of Contempt means that melter gun becomes AP3, which means you get a 5+ save. Now, bearing in mind that most anti-tank weapons cap out at armor 4, AP4. This is actually really, really good. And don't forget, there's a lot of weapons, there's a lot of factions out there which their anti-armor caps out at -3. Think of the standard las cannon and the las cannon equivalents out there. They are only AP3. You get a 4+ save against las cannons. You get a 4+ save against any kind of power weapon or thunder weapon or anything like that. You get a 4+ save. So this thing pretty much always have a save. So while it doesn't have necessarily an exact invulnerable save, it certainly has a what I would like to call pseudo invulnerable save. It's always going to get some kind of save pretty much. So that solves one of the biggest problem with Guard super heavies. Now, but you might be saying, for Mordian Glory, everything you're telling me right now doesn't necessarily apply to the Arcturian Stormblade specifically. This could, what you're saying, could apply to any of the Baneblades and any of the Hellhammers, any of the Shadow Swords. And yes, you're absolutely right. But bear with me for a second, guys. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. So far, I'm just butchering you up on why Imperial Guard super heavies are suddenly actually good. Now, this thing comes with some decent firepower. You'll be surprised it doesn't come with like the best firepower for an Imperial Guard super heavy, but it comes with a solid amount of firepower. So its main weapon that it gets is a plasma blast gun, and this has got 2 firing modes. It fires heavy 2d6 shots. It is strength 9, it is AP -4, and it is flat damage 3. And this is the standard profile for the plasma blast gun, 72-inch range. So that's actually quite good. 2d6 isn't like the most shots you'll get from super heavy. If you look at the Baneblade, that actually has 3d6, but guess what? 2d6 is absolutely fine because of the profile of that weapon. It's strength 9, which means it's pretty much winning anything in the game on 3s or better. It's AP4, which means even if you're slamming this thing into something which has got Armour of Contempt itself, you're still going to be putting them onto a really low save. You know, you're looking at putting Marines on like 6s, any other vehicle out there on like 6s, that's absolutely fine. And if you're facing that something that isn't Armour of Contempt, pretty much you're guaranteed to make it full on its ass and go on an invulnerable save. If it hasn't got an invulnerable save, it's fucking dead. So AP4 is absolutely more than enough, and the best bit is its flat damage 3. Now that's really good because flat damage 3 means that even if someone's got some kind of reduced damage by 1 shenanigans, you don't care. You're still going to be doing multiple damage to it no matter what. So that's absolutely fantastic. And the best bit is it has the, well, not the best bit, but a nice little bit on top, is it has the blast rule, which means actually has decent firepower going into hordes. The moment that someone puts something like, you know, a 10-man squad or 11-man squad together, you're going to be looking at getting some max shots in this bad boy, which is absolutely fantastic. And it does have an overcharge profile as well, although it's certainly your big dick swinging move if you overcharge it, because it gets an extra strength, so it goes up to strength 10, it gets an extra damage, so it goes to damage 4, but each time an unmodified hit roll of 1 is made for an attack with this weapon profile, the bearer suffers 3 mortal wounds, so it is pretty risky. If you're going to roll a lot of 1s, you may end up doing a lot of damage to your own tank. So the main gun is what I would describe as decent, but what is also great about the Stormblade is, like any Imperial Guard Super Heavy, you can strap some sponsons to it. Now, unlike other Guard Super Heavies, the Stormblade can't have 4 sponsons strapped to it, it can just have 2. But that's absolutely fine. You get, with these sponsons, you get 2 heavy bolters on each side, and you also get a las cannon on top, which those las cannons help up the anti-tank ability, and combine the fact that this thing comes with a heavy bolter. Anyway, not 2, it comes with a heavy bolter, means you will have 5 heavy bolters, 2 las cannons, and the plasma blast gun on top. And if you really want to, you can slap a heavy stubber on top as well. Now that actually gives this thing a decent rate of fire. 15 heavy bolter shots a turn, 2 las cannon shots a turn, and you've got the 2d6 from the plasma blast gun. Now I know what you're thinking, but Mordian Glory, this doesn't sound like a huge amount of firepower. I'm used to my Baneblade running around there and having 3d6 shots and a marsh cannon the hole, and it's got 2 heavy bolters, and then it gets up to 4 sponsons as well. Doesn't seem like this has as much firepower as you make it out to be. What is the big deal about this Super Heavy? Well, the big deal about the Super Heavy is the price point. Not the physical price point, that actually it's from Forge World, so it'll set you back 150 quid. But the price point in terms of points. This thing is very, very cheap. It is 380 points. Now you might think, that doesn't seem very cheap, especially when I've got to add sponsons on. That's the best bit. Without the sponsons, right now, are only 10 points per sponson. That's right, as per the latest points, it's only 10 points per sponson, which means you can take an Octorian Stormblade with the blast gun, with the 2 las cannons, and the 5 heavy bolters for only 400 points. That is so affordable. As far as I'm aware, that is one of the most affordable Super Heavies in the game right now. That thing is going to be putting out 15 heavy bolter shots today. It's going to be putting out a couple of las cannons, and on top of that, it's going to be putting out an average of 7 to 8 of those plasma blast gun shots a turn. That's absolutely fantastic. And don't forget, you might be thinking, oh, but there's a random number of shots that plasma blast gun. You've got a couple of ways around that. You could take a custom regiment so that this thing can re-roll the random number of shots on that weapon, so you're having a great time. Or you can just spend a CP. Bearing in mind that it's now basically free to take a Super Heavy Auxiliary Detachment in your army, you can spend a CP on this if you need to get rerolls on that number of shots in the gun if you need to. So it's actually not even unreliable with the number of shots that it puts out. 400 points, guys, to give you an idea. If you compare it to some other shooting Super Heavies out there, so for example, if you compare it to a Baneblade with the same loadout, that Baneblade is going to cost you 410 points base, and then you're looking at another 60 points on top for the heavy bolter sponsor. So to get a Baneblade with sponsors, you're looking at like 470 points, roughly. In comparison to this, which is 400 points. It's almost 25% cheaper. It's about, what, 20% cheaper? That's pretty good. And if you compare it, what are you losing for those 70 points? Now, that's important because, you know, what are you losing for those 70 points? Well, you're losing the Demolisher Cannon and the Autocannon and a Heavy Bolter. Now, bear in mind, if an Autocannon is 10 points and a Demolisher Cannon is like, let's say, well, if you look on it's probably, let's say, like 20 points. And if you look at the Heavy Bolter as an extra 10 points, that's only like 40 points difference. So actually, the Stormblade is for some reason 30 points cheaper. Well, I know why it's 30 points cheaper. It's because the sponsons are so goddamn cheap. So the Stormblade is a really, really affordable Super Heavy. If you then look outside of the Guard Super Heavies and look at something like a Knight, if you look at like a basic Imperial Knight, if we compare it to let's say what's the shooter Knight, the Imperial Knight Crusader, that thing comes with a rapid fire battle cannon. That has basically the same number of shots as the plasma gun, okay? And then it has the Gatling gun, which has basically the same number of shots as the heavy bolters. Oh, and it can take like a carapace weapon. Well, that's probably equivalent to the 2 las cannons overall. It can take heavy stuff, so can we. Fine. So you've basically got the same firepower, but the Imperial Knight, yeah, it's got a 5% vulnerable save, but you've got Armor of Contempt. The Imperial Knight's got a 3-up save, but you've got a 2-up save. The Imperial Knight Crusader costs 490 points before you even put a carapace weapon on it. If you compare this shooty super heavy to another faction, in fact the faction known for super heavies, it comes out cheaper every single time. It's cheaper than a Knight Paladin, it's cheaper than a Knight Crusader, it's cheaper than a Knight Errant, it's cheaper than every single medium-sized knight. That's how affordable this thing is in terms of points. That's why I'm gushing over it. But I know what you're going to be saying. But Morning Glory, that knight gets access to regiment traits. That knight gets access to close combat. You know, even if it's not got a chainsword, it can still kick things to death. And that knight hits on 3+. The Stormblade does none of those things. Well, that is where you are wrong, my friend. You see, the Stormblade is a really good unit, and any Imperial God, this kind of applies to any Imperial God Super Heavy, but this really applies to Stormblade because it's so goddamn affordable. Is that the Stormblade and any Imperial God Super Heavy, you can dump as much CP into them as you want to make them as effective as you want, and you can do that on a turn-by-turn basis. Do you want your Super Heavy to have a regiment trait? That's fine. Put a tank case on it. It's 1 CP. It's 1 CP. This thing, put a tank case on it, it gets a regiment trait. That's absolutely incredible. Then you can put something like your custom regiment trait on, or you can make it Destroying. Now, why would you want to make it Destroying? Well, you guys know what I'm going to say. If you take your Super Heavy as Destroying, you get access to the stratagem Firstborn Pride, which gives this thing +1 to hit, which means it hits as good as a knight, and it has got regiment traits like a knight's got its knight traits. And then you might say, yeah, but what about close combat, Mordian Glory? Well, the best bit is that you can spend 1 CP a turn on the turns that you need it. Doesn't need to be every turn, just the turns that you need it for Crush Them. Crush Them is in any charge phase. It's not just in your charge phase, it's in any charge phase. Even if you haven't charged, you can still use the stratagem Crush Them, which allows you to hit on 2s. And the best thing is that the adamantium tracks of the Stormblade are the equivalent of the Knight's Stomping Feet. They're both AP2, they both have an average damage of 2. So there you go. The Stormblade is actually pretty good in combat. In fact, if you spend a CP on it, as of when you need that CP, then you actually hit better than the Knight Crusader, because he only hits on 3s. I believe, could be wrong, I'm not a knight expert. So there you go, guys. Look, this is very much a fun video. I'm not expecting them to rush out there and for 4 to have a massive backlog of Arcturian Stormblades. But what I'm saying is, if you have a Super Heavy, or if you're interested in a Super Heavy and you want to kit bash an extra turret for your current existing Baneblade or whatever, seriously, or just want to proxy it and try out the Arcturian Stormblade. The key thing with it, which is going to sound crazy, is it's kind of a giant distraction card effects. Okay? It's kind of a crazy giant distraction card effects, because for a Super Heavy, it's cheap, and it's durable, and it's got firepower. It doesn't care about getting tied up or anything like that. It just shoots away because it's got the lumbering behemoth rule, or the titanic behemoth, whatever you want to call it, where basically it can shoot all the time. It can fall back and charge. It can do whatever it wants. It's just like any other titanic unit out there. And look, it's just a bit of fun. It's a fun unit, and it's a viable Super Heavy. And the crazy thing is that you don't care if you lose it, because it's 400 points. Now, 400 points is a lot. You wouldn't want to lose that in 1 turn. But if you just ram your Stormblade down the throat of the enemy, it takes them 2 or 3 turns to deal with it whilst the rest of your army is pounding on them, then that Stormblade has done its job. Not only has it been smashing the enemy, it's been drawing in all of their firepower. If you can repair it and whatnot, even better. The longer you can keep that Stormblade just smashing apart your enemy and being the #1 threat on the field, then the longer that the rest of your army is getting to do work. That's the key thing about it. Ironically, these things are meant to be like super rare and super husbanded by the Imperium. But on the tabletop, we don't care about that. On the tabletop, we're just thinking, how much can I piss my opponent off with my Stormblade so the rest of my army can win me the game? That's how you Stormblade. Unlike in the past, when guys Super Heavies, you wanted to be careful with them and husband them and not lose them because they're so precious and fragile. You do not care about the Stormblade. You do not care. It's just going to go out there and it's going to smash the entire area. It's going to kill anything with more than 2 arms. It's just going to kill everything. And if it doesn't, at the very least, it's going to distract everything. for at least 2 turns, probably 3 if you've got some repairing abilities around it. So that's why I like the Archer Stormblade. I think it's really, really cool, and I hope you guys do too. But put down in the comments below, what do you think? Have you been trying out your Super Heavies? Have they been any good? What's your favourite Super Heavy? Have you been using the Stormblade? Have you found it successful? If you have, how have you used it? If not, what did you find went wrong with it? But just put loads of comments down below. Massive thank you, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And if you have enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and a subscribe and all that kind of good stuff. And if you really enjoyed it and you want to go the extra mile for support of the channel, please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. It is thanks to the incredible support of the channel members and patrons that the Mordian Glory channel has been going from strength to strength. I'm able to go to tournaments, I'm able to try units out, bring this feedback back, and do lots and lots of crazy videos. So massive thank you to all of the channel members and all of the Patreon supporters. And I want to take a moment to shout out our latest channel members and patrons. So massive thank you to StrikeEv3, Justin Hoji, Neo Cosmopolis, Eric McCombs, Dwarf Hammer, Caligula, Ryan Hancock, and Silent Warrior for becoming channel members. Thank you guys for doing your part. And of course, I want to say thank you to the latest patrons as well. Thank you to Gankistani, Ben Thorne, Alon Harfin, Marcus Robert, Timothy Jägermeister, and Jesse Cashman. Now, last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal, heartfelt thank you to all of our top tier Patreon supporters. I want to say a massive thank you to August Varney, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, and Swordfish Trombone for being signed up at the Lord General level. It is the top tier of Patreon support for Patreon for this channel. So massive thank you to you guys. And I want to say a thank you to Diesel Fox, Shooter McGavin, Tom Sutton, and Ross Miller. These guys have signed up at the Commissar level, which is another really high tier of Patreon support. So massive thank you to all of you. You're all absolutely incredible, wonderful, generous, and amazing people. Thank you so much. So that's all for today now. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, guys, I'll see you guys next time.